I want to welcome everyone for tonight's webinar, which is Buy Right, Profit Fast, Practice Valuation and Profit Leaks. We're going to be showing you some of the steps and things that you need to do in order to find out what your practice is worth, how to avoid leaks that will hamper your growth and the timeline for you to be profitable faster. And we're going to show you how to get there through visibility. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and thank you so much for choosing to be with us tonight, because you could have been anywhere else and you chose to be here with us. And funny enough, it's already March 2nd, and we had the session scheduled for about a week ago, which means that the year's going by really fast. But there's also the good news that there's still plenty of time for us to make strategic moves now that can potentially change the trajectory, right? And change how we end our businesses, how you end your practice in 2026. So tonight is about clarity, and clarity changes everything. The reason why this conversation matters, and I want to move on to the next slide, it's because we are here and you're probably in one of these three, these three situations. You're either thinking about acquiring a practice because there are a lot of retiring dentists, a lot of dentists reaching over 50, 60 years old. They're staying later in the marketplace, but there are a lot of opportunities. A lot of practices are going out into the market. And we have a lot of the DSOs that are trying to grow their portfolio and so on and so forth. But we also want to create those opportunities for those small private practitioners that can get into those locations and take advantage of it. But how do you evaluate a practice when you don't have the experience? And when you know that brokers and a lot of the people that are working are sometimes not looking into all of the intangibles that are the dynamics of a successful dental practice, that is not just the numbers. You're probably new to practice ownership, or you're thinking about stepping into practice ownership like Dr. Brianna, or you're maybe an existing practice owner who knows that there is a profit margin and growth potential that you're not tapping into, and you need to create and have more visibility, right? Like you need to have better system to track this. So we're going to talk about those, critical things, how to buy right, or how to know your practice's current financial health situation, if you will, and how to take it to the next level, how to get into a diet, if you will, so that you can get it to where you need to be. And I couldn't be more proud or excited to introduce you guys to my guest tonight. And the conversation that I'm having, it's with someone that I deeply respect. Dr. Aditi is not only a clinician and entrepreneur, but she's also a practice owner. And she has worn so many hats herself. She's a mother, she's a wife, she's a business owner, multiple businesses, and she understands what it means to balance leadership, family, and growth. And what I admire most is that instead of just, accepting blind spots and in dentistry, she's built a solution that she implemented for her businesses, for her practices. And this is, basically Practice by Numbers was created because too many dentists were just typically, generally speaking, and myself as an office manager, former one, we operate without true visibility of what's truly going on behind the scenes. So, strategy without visibility fails, analytics without action fails. And tonight we're going to see how these two worlds come together, right? So Dr. Aditi, before we jump into frameworks and numbers, just tell us a little bit about your journey, what your experience as an owner, and what led you to basically create Practice by Numbers.
Thank you, Maritza, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everybody, and it is a real pleasure to be able to share my experience with you, and thank you for sharing your time with us, because I know it's late. And forgive me, but I am recovering from a cold, so if I cough a little bit, I apologize. But this is my 23rd year as a practicing dentist. I know, I'm aging in reverse, aren't we all?
You're amazing, amazing.
But it's truly been a journey for me because I have been an analog dentist and I have moved to the digital world, and now we are embracing AI. So there has been a lot to learn. I have been an associate dentist for 7 years. I had started my first startup in 2010 and my second startup in 2016. As if one wasn't enough, I'm pretty crazy, as you can see. In my first startup early on, realized that I was having difficulty with my patients accepting treatment. And I, at that time, honestly thought it was a me problem. You know, as
Mm.
dentists, we generally tend to put the blame on ourselves. And it wasn't until I started looking more deeply into why my patients were not accepting treatment that I realized it was because I didn't have enough financing options. But it was a long road of almost 6 months of introspection, of pulling reports from my PMS, of creating spreadsheets, of trying to understand where I'm failing. Because honestly, I had a very huge load on my back. I
Yes.
couldn't fail. And you know, when you have that kind of a pressure, and my son was 2.5 years old at
Oh
that
my,
time,
yes.
and I was like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to manage to pay back these loans and you know, also raise my family? That's when I started looking. Actually, my husband was like, hey, the answer is always in the numbers. And I would be like, I don't know what numbers you're talking about. You know, I only know 323, the periodontal charting numbers. I don't know what other numbers you're talking about. So that's when I started looking at the reports and realized where my case acceptance was falling through. And once I started to make a shift, a change in that one metric, suddenly, or not suddenly, but you know, over a few months, my practice started to shift. Everything started to take off, and I started to become profitable. And that's when I realized that, wow, if one little change in one's place of running a practice can impact my livelihood in such
Yes.
a big way, what if I started to look at other pieces of it? And that's when my husband, he's an engineer, and he was like, well, I can, you know, we can keep pulling reports. This was, I think, 2012, 2013. I was pregnant with my second child at that time. So it was definitely fun times. And when at that time, he started to look at these numbers and make those reports. And I said, I wish there were things that were, these things were easily visible, because I'm a dentist, I'm a visual person. I
Yes.
like to see things in an easily readable fashion and it sticks. So I think he created first dashboard for me in, I can't remember exactly, 2013, I think it was. And when I saw that, it's like, I don't know if you guys have ever practiced without loops, but for me, it was like
Like,
wearing loops. Like I could now see what was going on in my practice on so many different levels. And having that kind of insight, having that kind of data that helped me then make changes in my practice, honestly, my practice started soaring so much so that I could do another startup in 2016.
that's
So
amazing.
you can imagine
That's
that
a
gave me the confidence with two young kids to do a second startup in 2016. And that,
you mentioned something that was so powerful, that you were thinking about your case acceptance as a me problem.
mhm,
And a lot of times we tend to put ourselves in the position that we think we are the problem, and the problem we are, it's our problem because we're creating it, but we're creating it by not having the systems and the processes to have the visuals and the metrics that we need to tell us the story. And I love how you say the numbers, because that's exactly what your husband said. It's true. Numbers tell the story, and then from there you can get back into the right path. And so that's amazing how from learning from that need, from that mistake that you made as a first time business owner, you found the solution. You got yourself your partner, in this case your husband, who walked you through and helped you find the um, the solution to this problem. You implemented that, and then that resulted, instead of stress, it created opportunities for you to
Yep.
start a second business at the same time that you're starting and growing a family. You were basically growing two businesses that ultimately led to a third business, because then that was the birth of Practice by Numbers, so your third
Exactly.
baby, or fourth at the time, right?
I lost count.
So that's amazing. And this is why I feel that this conversation is so powerful, because the collaboration, it's more like you wore the hats in terms of, the ownership. And we have similar journeys and backgrounds, but for me, it's on the, I've worn every hat as a regional manager myself. And I started my career as a clinical dental assistant. And so I've worked every hat in a dental office, from the operational administrative side of things. And to your point, when I was a clinical assistant, I was I did see a lot of the dentists and the case presentations and the lack of systems, and some doctors that were great at doing the clinical work but really struggle on the side of getting patients to say yes to treatment. And then I transitioned. So for those of you who are new to my world, I started MDent, and MDent was born out of the need of some of these associate dentists that, unlike Dr. Aditi, who had her husband and partnership and things like that, don't know who to go to, or who to ask for help and have the mentorship to launch their first practices. And they don't have the clarity, right? Like, so the program that I developed and that I put together through MDent, it's basically following what I call the 5 pillars of practice ownership success, which it starts with with your vision. The second one, which you did really well, is the people that you surround yourself with, right? Pre-opening, post-opening, the numbers. Again, we talk about how the numbers always tell the story. The training is the 4th pillar of practice ownership success. And then the 5th is systems. So how do we create systems that are predictably able to take us to where we need to go next, so that we don't have those profit leaks? In the recent years, I've noticed that there has been so many dentists that are either looking into established practices, because the benefit of the startup, I feel, for most of my clients, is always the fact that you start and you have a blank canvas, so you're able to write the story from the beginning. But then you don't have the patience. You need to build your business from scratch, right? So there is the trade-off. In other instances, and this is something that I always say to doctors, that the dentist that you are today as an associate, you're thinking, hey, I can do a better job than my owner, right? I can treat the staff better. I can make better decisions. I want more freedom, and I want to be able to have control of the treatment and the patients, and have more sense of ownership. But the same self-talk that you're having as an associate working for somebody else, you're as that same owner as an associate had that same self-talk, and ended up working and owning the practice where you feel that they're not doing a good job. And so goes kind of like that cycle. So unless you, as a startup, or as a first time practice owner, develop the skills and bridge the gap between your clinical skills and the administrative ownership skills that are required for you to take your business and turn it into a profitable vehicle that serves you, your community, and ultimately your patients and your staff, right? Because there's so much competition in the world now. So this is where I feel like this is a great conversation for us to have. I know that the subject of today's conversation, and some of you I know that are doing startups, so we want to be able to have it where we are basically speaking to you and answering your questions. So some of you are doing startups. Let us know if you are already an established practice owner, or if you're planning to acquire, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to answer your questions. We're going to have some Q&A towards the end, but let us know in the chat where you are in your journey, so that we can set the agenda and customize it to your needs. Now, what is it that we're trying to accomplish today in this collaboration between us is because strategy plus a good valuation framework for you for those of you who are contemplating taking over an established practice rather than doing a startup from scratch, then plus visibility and analytical infrastructure, which is Dr. Aditi's Practice by Number program. Together, they bring the clarity and the leverage for you to be able to scale your practice. And we're going to share some case studies from her and some case studies from some of our clients in common, so that you can see the power of these analytical tools. I'm not going to spend that much time on the actual framework itself. For those of you who are joining now, or just, thinking about doing evaluation for your practice, you can reach out to me. If you're watching the recording after the webinar, that's also great. But I'm just going to do an overview of why I do the 8-point valuation system. This is a framework that I learned from Dr. Tony. He developed this program. He works a lot with DSOs, and the most common way of structuring learning the value of a practice for purchase, it's usually based on the EBITDA or just multiples or like a percentage of collections. But I feel, and from a lot of the offices that I've seen and been participated on the operational side for like the due diligence process of these valuations, they miss out on a lot of the brokers, and some of the people and accountants miss out on a lot of the intangibles, the things that happen that only when you work in a dental office and you've worn all the hats like we have, you can ask these questions. And this framework that he developed basically covers that, and that is why I lean towards it. And I'm going to basically show you how we put it into practice with one of our things. This is basically it's one of those things that you can see it from like from the standpoint of, are you still seeing my screen? Just the screen. Okay, perfect. So the way that you can pretty much say that the practice valuation is based on 3 buckets, if you will. The first one is the financial truth of the practice. The second bucket is the operational and the intangibles. And obviously the third one is the structural and the risk factors for that particular deal that you're looking at. And so the 8 areas of the practice that we're looking to analyze, right, are first the collections. How is the financial standards of the practice? How are they, like their gross revenue versus the net, calculating all of those things. So one of the things as part of the due diligence, we ask for their, tax returns. We want to be able to see everything, how the office is doing financially. The second part of the system that Dr. Tony developed that I follow when we do the valuations is the location. How is the location in a urban area versus and it's a point valuation system where we get the fair market value of the location, and it needs to be in alignment with what the EBITDA is, but it covers a lot more than just the numbers in itself, the financials. So when we look at the space and the facility, the equipment, the patient base, how many patients are active, and this is where the area where the profit leaks and a lot of opportunities come into play. The vitality of the patient, recare, all of the systems that are internal, and by using practice by numbers and writing these reports, you're able to get the real picture. But one of the things that I'm noticing with a lot of the transitions that I am participating with is the skepticism from the sellers of allowing for the buyers to go through this process. Or when we're dealing with the brokers, and I've had conversations with some of them that say, you know what, for me, I just want to be able to sell, and then the doctors can figure out when they get into the practices. And so I feel like, hey, when you're working with a broker, I think, and it's fair because this is their job and so on and so forth. But again, they want to sell at peak price or for as many multiples as possible. And then they let you decide or figure out a lot of those intangibles after the fact. So the 8-point valuation systems open the window where we specifically ask questions in a strategic way that gives us the entire picture. So that's kind of like the first bucket. On the second one, which is everything pertaining to the operations of the practice, finding those profit leaks. We look at the patient base, all of those things. And I think, Dr. Aditi, you're going to show us a little bit more about how do we retrieve some of these reports. And again, our topic for tonight is practice valuations and how to buy right. But for those of you who have established practices, you always want to be looking into and running reports and seeing what your profit margin is on the year-to-year basis, because you want to position your business where you need to have your exit strategy, or if you're going to bring in an associate, and when is the right time for us to do that. To structure these things, you need to know how much your practice is worth. It's not just a matter of you looking into acquiring somebody else's practice. It is as if I am looking to exit today out of my business. How much is my business worth? So this also can apply to you if you have an established practice, and finding those areas of opportunity to work on and create the strategy so that before the end of the year, you're able to troubleshoot and increase your profit margin. That's kind of like our goal for you today. The fifth bucket, which is the structural and risk assessment, is a lot of times, we look into the lease. Are you like, what is the assignment from the seller to you? Or what are some of the things? Can you renegotiate the lease? What are the terms of the lease? And one that is extremely important, I have to say, it's team and staffing. A lot of times when we go, and what I've seen in some of these valuations, we have seasoned employees that have already reached a plateau with the seller or with the owner. And so it's a hard sell for them to be motivated and brought into the new standards and the new ideas and the new vision that as a new owner you're trying to bring in. And so those are kind of like those risk factors that you want to pay attention to before you sign off on the deal. Or if you have a practice right now that you are running, you also want to make sure that your team, it's covering itself and its salary, and each department within your practice, it's paying off and it's profitable. So I think that gives us that window for us to have. Let me see if I'm sharing this right, because I have so many things open. Let me go to my next slide here. So that's kind of like the 8-point valuation system in a nutshell. Now we're going to talk about, like, how do we profit fast, right? Like, the first thing that we do when we're looking into self-analyzing our business or contemplating doing the due diligence to get into someone else's business and acquire a practice is, first we audit. So the 3 A's, we're going to call this the 3A framework. We audit, we adjust, and we act. So within the audit, what we really want to do is find the true overhead and the real profit margin, right? A lot of the sellers, when you get all of the P&Ls and the tax returns, a lot of people are in payroll that shouldn't be in payroll, family members, and so on and so forth. So you need to divide and conquer. And that's one of those exercises and things that we need to do, and figure out how to get the real margin for that particular deal, if that is the case. And another thing that we noticed and we focus on a lot is the revenue leakage and underpayments. A lot of underpayments in a lot of departments within the practice, case acceptances, as Dr. Aditi was mentioning before. A lot of times the revenue cycle management is not optimized. The reimbursement is not optimized. A lot of these locations and practice owners, one thing that I do see often, it's very outdated fees. And now with a lot of the insurances that are overlapping, and they have kind of like this, these new loopholes that are like share cost savings. Now you have one contract and then they affect all of the other insurances that you're participating with. So a lot of times, we need to adjust the insurance strategy, the negotiation. In one of my cases for my doctor, and then I'll pass it over to you to talk about the profit leaks, is we find a lot of overpayments in a lot of instances for some of our clients with vendors. Like I had a client who acquired a practice, and the office manager, when we were having one of the sessions, we were speaking on the subject of all of the different vendors that the seller had relationships with, and the lab fees. They never looked into the lab fees for like how much they were paying for a PFM crown or zirconia crowns or anything. And when we run the numbers, it was outrageous. And the doctor said, as an associate, I work with this other lab that it's great. But a lot of people really feel that, hey, they need to maintain everything. And the office managers have like interpersonal relationship with certain people. They think that it's just common, but they don't understand that the doctor coming in has taken a massive loan. So the seller's overhead, it's no longer the same overhead, because now we've just added to the bottom line, or I'm sorry, to the cost of running this practice, a huge loan that the debt needs to be eradicated. And so they don't understand this. And a lot of times the doctors don't take the initiative because they want to have the minimal risk factor or disruption in what they're doing. The office managers, again, seasoned individuals that can sometimes be patronizing to the newer, younger dentist that it's taking over, could be a little intimidating. So you just kind of like throw the can a little bit further down, and you feel like, okay, the seller trusted this company. We find about like $20,000 in savings from just, like the lab fees and credit card costs. That's another area to where there are. So in a business, we only have two things that we can control. It's reducing cost and increasing productivity. And, so what I like to do with my doctors after we do the audit and we do the valuation, and we know the practice fair market value, the seller agrees to it or not. But we use that data and that information to create our strategy so that we can reduce the cost when we come in and we take over ownership, and so that we are able to increase that profit margin by strategically then optimizing the reimbursement, how we get paid, increasing and improving some of the operational things that we discover, such as scheduling and flow. And then obviously we take action. We basically want to be able to have those visibility, the dashboards and the accountability. And I think this is where you come in. So you're going to talk to us about how do we now look into these things from your using the platform Practice by Numbers.
Well, thank you, Maritza. I mean, lots of really, really, really important pieces of information that you shared, Maritza, just now. And definitely, depending on what stage you are in your practice journey, whether you are acquiring a practice, whether you are hoping to do a startup, or whether you are actually an existing practice owner who eventually wants to position themselves to sell your practice. As Maritza said, it's really, really important to obviously do an audit of your practice, not only to see what is going on a yearly basis, looking at your P&L and all of that, but literally looking at your practice on a daily basis. And there are very, very few things you need to do, even to, it can be overwhelming. I know, I've been there. And where you think, oh my God, I have to look at all these metrics. I have to look at the P&L. I have to look at my lab costs. I have to look at my supply costs. Yes and no. I think what you need to focus on initially is understand, okay, I want maybe top 5 metrics that I need to look at on a monthly basis, 5 that I need to look at every 6 months, and 5 annually. So you've got about 15 total key performance indicators or KPIs that you have to look at, and you break it down for yourself and your team. You know, one of the most important things that is very important to me is the morning huddle. And, you know, back in the day, and like I said, I was an analog dentist. When I practiced back in the day and we did not have something like a morning huddle, we still did a huddle. I know you all know, right? Where we would go in and talk about the patients that we were going to see that day. What was on their health history? Are they allergic to any medications? You know, what kind of anesthesia we're using? And the hygienist would go over, okay, are we doing quad scales? And if we're doing scaling root planing, you know, it was all clinical, which is great, is so important. But for me, and I know for now, in 2026, to practice in 2026, you need to look at not only your patient data, you also need to look at your practice data. Because if you look at this on a daily basis, you will reduce the number of things you're going to have to look at in running your practice effectively on a weekly, monthly, semi-annually, or annually basis, because you're catching things early. It's like back in the day, you know, when you're done with, at the end of the day, when I worked for a group practice, and back then it wasn't called a DSO, and there, the whole thing at the end of the day, I was given a day sheet where I would have to go over my production and sign off on it and make sure that this was actually done. And, you know, stacks and stacks of paper, which was, again, this is 20 years ago, but the same thing we are translating, it is still needed, it's still important. And why is it important? It's because it can save you a lot of time. It can save your team a lot of time and energy, and also increase your profitability. Now, how does it do that? You have a patient that comes in, say, today or tomorrow for a cleaning, and you look at them, and in the morning huddle, you can tell and see, is that patient, have they been overdue, first of all, for their cleaning? Do they have family members that haven't come in and are overdue? Do they have treatment plans that are outstanding, that were planned, I don't know, 6 months ago, and haven't gotten scheduled? If that is the case, you can preemptively have that conversation that, hey, we noticed that you have a treatment plan that hasn't been scheduled. What is the barrier? How can we help you get that scheduled in? You can have those conversations. You can actually even make sure you can see, oh, wow, I have this person who has treatment that hasn't been scheduled. I have time today. Maybe tell that your office manager or treatment coordinator and say, you know, when this person comes in, have that conversation beforehand. Maybe we can have them stay and get that treatment done. And you can have same day treatment changes and opportunities, right? If there are financial conversations, because say you can see what their pending balances are. People come in all the time and they owe $40. They've been owing $40 for a year. Like, let's get that collected, right? Or let's have that conversation. What is it going to take for that patient to? So it's literally on a daily basis, you're having those conversations in a very active way with your patients, which enables you to run your practice much, much smoother, both for your team and for the patients as well. Because you know
100%.
what? Now that you make it about the patients, they care, because now you're talking about not just, oh, the clinical side of anesthesia and, you know, the post-op instructions and stuff. You're also talking about the whole patient, the financial part of the patient, the scheduling part of the patient. And it's important because what do patients, honestly, guys in the chat, please tell me, what do you think patients like about themselves? What do they want to hear from us, really?
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Let us know in the
What do they
chat.
want to hear? They only want to hear one thing, is how much we care about them, really. And this gives you that leg up, gives you information about the patient that you're going to see the same day. So really important in my mind, the first thing is to understand the morning huddle and to use it effectively.
Yes, you mentioned something really powerful, which is, and I think that this is being intentional and being proactive. And I
Mhm.
think this is one of those things that a lot of times we take for granted. Like we call the patient yesterday, or the system send them a reminder, but we tend to overlook at the minor details. And one of the things to add to this is homework that I usually give to my clients is this is your opportunity to make sure that the patients leave remembering how you made them feel,
Mhm.
and gives you the like put them in debt to giving you a review or a referral,
Mhm.
because based on the experience that and how you make them feel, they're going to feel morally committed to giving something in reciprocity. And so
Yeah.
if you're intentional and proactive by having your morning huddles, and you identify these patients and you focus on giving them kind of like a better experience and manage everything and educate them, then it gives you currency to be able to do the ask before the end of the visit, so that you can get that review, so that you can get that referral and present them with more opportunities. I love it. Can I go ahead to the next slide?
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful. So this is a case study you want to share with us. Let me see if anyone wrote anything. No, I don't think we had, and sorry for the interruption. I had a call coming in, so I had
No, you're fine. You're fine. You know, life happens. Even in webinars and seminars and everything else, life happens. So, guys, this is a case study that you can, scan the QR code and download. It's a very interesting study about how, when a practice, this is the Bayco Family and Cosmetic Dentistry, when they really started to get visible and understand their KPIs in their practice, they got so much better outcomes, both in terms of same day treatment acceptance, in terms of reducing their AR, because now you know what's coming in
yeah,
real time, right? What the collections are looking like in real time. And also, you can protect your collections because now you understand if you can do the bulk insurance verification. And
Mhm.
when you do that, you can really prevent denials, of course, because now you know beforehand what is going to need a narrative, what is probably going to be okay by insurance. And as you do this more and more and more, there everything has a pattern. You dentists out there who love patterns, so does insurance. And
Yes,
it's just tapping into those patterns takes little time. And it really, once you understand that, you can really dial in to what your insurance, when you work with
once.
insurances, what it wants and what it needs, so that you can actually streamline your processes much better, to a point where, for me now, I know which insurances are paying in my practice are paying at a 60-day or a 90-day. So then you can factor that into your collections, because
Yes,
now you know that you're not going to be able to get that money from that insurance for another 2 months. So you need to factor that in your production today. So it's very, very important to understand these little
those trends.
nuances, and and visibility with Practice My Numbers helps you understand that. And so you can make decisions better once you have that information. And of
Yes,
course, real-time KPIs, right? You can then really see where are you, like I said, missing out on care case acceptance.
that's amazing. So, guys, make sure that you download the QR code, that you take advantage of this. But I love it how we first focus on the patient experience through the morning huddle. Now we've already treated the patient, or we now need to make sure that we get paid for the work that we're doing, because let's be real, Dentistry, it's one of those things where it's the like healthcare, generally speaking, is where patients are accustomed, where we have to deal with third parties, with like us collecting payment. The patients have the expectations that they come in, they get their treatment, and then they're covered by their insurance. And then it's on us at the offices to be able to stay on top of it. So navigating the patient experience with the operational aspect of the billing cycles, and then the reconciliation, having the visibility and having these KPIs, these key performance in real time, gives you leverage. And this is how we avoid these profit leaks that sometimes make us feel like we are not, the needle is not moving, and we are concerned about meeting payroll. And then we have this cash flow. I really love how you've developed this to the point where you can predict like your cash flow, because yeah, sometimes we have certain insurances that their age and the reconciliation takes a different timeline. And so being able to do this, it's very empowering for you as a business owner. So this is very powerful, and I really hope that you guys are learning. And let me know in the chat how you guys are feeling, and if you're learning anything, to make sure you're not falling asleep. We're going to be wrapping up soon, and we want to be able to just bear with us. But if you're learning something, let us know, and because we can keep going.
Oh yeah, we could keep going forever. This is my favorite one, tracking unscheduled treatment. I think I drive all my staff crazy with this one to a fault. So as you guys know, treatment is how it's our bread and butter. It's how we move. It's how our practices flourish. More than that, it is how we serve our community. If our community is not getting treated for dental disease, obviously we're doing something wrong, right? And sometimes it is communication skills, sometimes it is financial issues, and sometimes it is just plain old nerves, right? And we need to figure out what it is so that we feel fulfilled as practitioners, and we are also fulfilling the need in our communities, because obviously the need is there. So it is important to understand, first of all, what is that value that the patients are placing on the treatment that you're presenting. Okay. It's very, very important to understand that. Sometimes can be an internal conversation. It can be a conversation with your team
Yes.
members. And also to understand, it's important for your team to understand, why are we doing this? Why are we doing what we're doing, right? It is to, what is the value that your team places in what you are suggesting to the patients, right? And I think once you have alignment in value, both for yourself, your team, and your patients, you will find that your treatment value will go up. So I know I went a little deep there. So there's no real metric, but this one is really important conversation to have both with your team, because what you can communicate to your team will then they will communicate to the patients, and will in turn then uplift your treatment value. So once we have a perceived treatment value, which is emotional,
Yes.
that you have communicated in the operatory with the patient. Now let's talk about what we can do from turning that emotion into action.
Into acceptance of treatment. So that's another huge profit leak that I see in so many offices: unscheduled treatment. And I remember when we first, started the session, you said, I thought it was a me problem. And yes and no, because at the end of the day, the numbers tell the story. And what you need to do about the numbers is you need to audit, you need to adjust, and you need to act, the three A's, right? So we've audited because we are using this system to be able to identify, hey, this patient has a trend, and we have what is going on in my business. Why aren't patients? So is it a perceived value? Is it financial burden for the patient, and I need to expand on my financial offerings to make sure that everyone that I engage with more companies to make it easier for the patients to afford it? Is it a trust and authority thing, which is also key? And you mentioned communication with your team, because they are like a sponge and they need to see the value in you as a product.
Mhm.
Is what I usually rehearse with my clients as well, startups or acquisitions, that when we hire and we put a new team in place, they we need to build that trust and kind of like earn that, that build that authority within them, right? Like the trust building and the authority. They need to trust the work that we're doing. I was having a conversation recently with a client, and we were talking about like a new hired for an office that I was doing a training on. I was invited to help them with training someone that they had hired, and he's like a fee for service, really high end practice. And when I was going over some of the bundles and the pricing for some of the services, like I got a lot of, oh really, like a lot of surprise about the price. And then, long story short, it didn't work out. And the reason why I knew it wasn't going to work out is because there was no alignment. You used the word alignment between the perceived value of the individual running, having to have the conversations with the patient, and the doctor, and the business model and the vision that they had. So then that channel of communication was not getting through the patients. And so that ultimately affects your, becomes a profit leak. So this helps you audit. Then as the business owner, you have the responsibility of adjusting what it is that is not working, putting systems in place that allow you to turn it around and make the adjustment and take action on that, so that it's awesome. So on scheduled treatment, making sure that the patients stay active, which is one of those, the vitality of the practice, the livelihood of your business, and opportunities within the practice and the relationship between you and the patient, so that they're ultimately receiving the utmost, like optimized care, right? It serves everyone in the picture. So, and then we have turning activities into KPIs. I love seeing numbers. Walk us through this one.
So, honestly, when you automate things, it really creates data that's reliable and clean. Yes, you can get manual reports. Yes, you can enter them, but spreadsheets is so 1995. Come on,
Mhm,
guys.
mhm,
Right? In 2026, we can have tools that we can use, that
mhm.
we can track, that tracks all this for you. It's really important, like we just talked about, is the case acceptance, the percentage of treatments scheduled, right? What is your production per patient? What is your new patient value? You want to know these small metrics, but these are really hard data. It's hard to find. But when you have software like this that's able to find this data, tabulate it, create a dashboard, and then you can visualize it, and all you have to do is act on it, all your team has to do is act on it, then the numbers from a curse, they become a blessing,
Yes.
right? And that's what we want to do, is how we turn every KPI into an activity, an action that actually is now able to be acted on.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Guys, this is very powerful. So I want to, before we take any questions, if anyone does, because I know that we're up for coming to wrap up in a little bit. This is one of my favorite clients. She's from India. She loves, like, and I enjoyed our work together so much. She was someone that wanted practice ownership. She reached out to me and she said, Maritza, I want to start my own practice, and I want you to help me. So we started looking into potential startups, looking into and she's in Tennessee. She was like, I'm in the South. It's very like the inventory is not the greatest here. There were some outdated practices that required a lot for the build out. And she said, you know what? I think that my my associate, where she's working as an associate, the seller sold to like a small DSO. I'm going to see if, the DSO would be willing to pass it on to me. And we started that journey of implementing the, 8-point valuation system. I think the asking price for the office was it was producing like around 980 to $1 million in revenue. She was an associate there. So she was exposed to a lot of the intangibles and the operational things. So it's a really great case study, because we started with her baseline of like, hey, this is how much the office is collecting on a monthly basis. It was generating that much, but with her loan and all of the things, we had to go through the entire process of the audit, taking P&Ls for each department, especially the hygienists and everyone involved, and figuring out a lot of profit leaks that were really hurting the cash flow, outdated insurance contracts and the reimbursement, the margin oppression with a lot of the cost and limited KPI visibility. This is where PBN comes in. And so we had to go through the intervention. We did the valuation framework. We looked into the projections, reanalyzed the entire practice, renegotiated their insurance contracts, found a ton of savings within vendors. And then we started implementing these weekly and daily huddles and things. This is me, and we were actually speaking of the huddles on that day when I came down to the office. And after 6 months, she sent me this great text message. She said, Maritza, we are doing 115K in collections. And just this month, she's been open for a year. She's like, this is like a personal dream of mine to be able to purchase the building now. So this is one of these doctors and one of these these stories that are very rewarding for us as business owners, as mom, as women in the industry, because we have to go through and wear so many hats, and sometimes we think that it's not possible. But again, with the right vision, surrounding ourselves with the right people with good understanding of the numbers, and this is why I'm so like honored and grateful for the opportunity to spend this time with you, training ourselves and putting into all of this learning this new aspect of business ownership, and educating ourselves in what is possible, right? Like that pillar, and then ultimately implementing those systems, practice by numbers, morning huddles. All of these things are definitely going to be the driver that is going to make it so that 2026, again, we said at the beginning, it's March 2nd already. The year goes by in a flash, but then we're still on time to audit, to adjust, and to act on whatever goals we have for this year, so that we can have a strong end to 2026 and beyond, right? Like this is just a foundational year for us for whatever goals we have in mind. And so with that, I want to be able to say that some of the next steps for some of you that downloaded the QR code, you're going to be able to have a profit leak snapshot from practice by numbers, so that you can have that KPI visibility. I can help you also do a reimbursement analysis and find some of those hidden leak identifications. And we can basically put together like a nice framework for you to follow. If you're looking into doing a startup or an acquisition, you can reach out to me so that we can help you put together kind of like the framework to acquire and or to launch a smart location and be able to predictably build a profitable and fulfilling practice. And like I could not be more grateful for your time and for the opportunity to spend this hour with you, Dr. Aditi. If anyone has any questions or anything, let us know now. You can turn on your and ask us any questions before we wrap up, if you have another 5 minutes or so. So that so we'll give it a minute, and we'll let you doctors share your last thoughts or any tips or advice or the best way to get in contact with you for
Well,
our
the best way
participants.
to contact me, of course, social handles, I am pretty open and very responsive. But my email is Aditi, that's ADITI Agarwal at practicenumbers.com. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
I'm gonna put that on the
Yeah,
chat.
thank you. And, don't be afraid to take the leap.
Mhm.
I took a leap very long time ago. I took a leap on myself a very long time ago. And that enabled me to create something far bigger than myself. And if I can do it, I know each and every one of you in this webinar can do it. It is scary, but it's not impossible. And you already have done the work because you're a dentist, and dentists
Yes.
are cool people.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, this has been, thank you so much again for your time. And for those of you, again, who showed up, we appreciate you. You are bound to be successful because you're taking the time to invest in yourself and learn from others. And that speaks volume. And we're here to cheer for you and support you along your journey. And we thank you for the opportunity to spend the night with you today. Thank you so much, everyone. And you're going to be getting a copy of the recording for and the contact information for Dr. Aditi as well. So someone from my team tomorrow will be reaching out to everyone to make sure you have all the assets and all of the tools and resources at your disposal. Everyone have a great night. Thank you, Dr. Aditi. God bless you. Thank you for
Thank
your time.
you.
Bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Good night.